my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
President John F. Kennedy took office during one of the most turbulent times in American history. From the first moments of his presidency, Kennedy evoked a sense of security and a spirit of idealism, which reassured Americans of their nation's strengths and inspired them to serve their country and the world. The popular legend of John F. Kennedy superseded reality. He made an unforgettable impression upon the American scene. With his beautiful wife, Jacqueline Kennedy, and his adorable children at his side, John F. Kennedy left a legacy of hope to millions of Americans.
Hello, and welcome to our special JFK edition of MystiCast. I'm Nikki Johnson.
And I'm Mercer Sage.
November 22nd will mark the 50th anniversary of John F. Kennedy's tragic assassination, and today's episode is dedicated to his life and the legacy he left behind.
Let's start by introducing our keynote speaker, Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent who jumped on the car immediately after the shooting.
When we initially they set this program up to go to Dallas, there was some concern about what the reaction would be in Dallas because of what had happened to U.S. Ambassador Adlai Stevenson 1 month previous. He had gone there to make a speech, he had been heckled, he'd been spat upon, and they had hit him with placards. So it wasn't really that friendly, it appeared. Then that morning while we were in Fort Worth, we got word about a pamphlet that was being passed in Dallas. And this is that pamphlet, Wanted for Treason, President Kennedy. So we knew that there was a certain element within that particular community that was very anti-Kennedy.
But you hadn't received any specific threats against the president himself?
No, we had no information of any threat of any kind against President Kennedy or Mrs. Kennedy while they were going to be in Dallas.
The symposium was an all-around success. It brought in large crowds and was looking great in the process. Credit is due for the marketing and the design for the event. Here is Jared Schumacher with more.
The JFK Symposium had many great speakers, looked great, and had a huge crowd. A lot of effort was put into the marketing for the JFK Symposium.
I think it all started in the brains of Dr. Scogan and Clay Jenkinson and many conversations that they have over the years, but this was the first year I got to be involved in it because I've only worked here for 2 years. So I'd heard tell of the 9/11 Symposium and the Eric Sevareid Symposium and how wonderful and intensive they were, and all those stories were true. It was a wonderful and intensive process to get it all together. This event was sort of a no-fail because we had media sponsors who were wonderful. I mean, the Tribune and KX both stepped up and gave us some free advertising, and then also because it was great news stories. They covered like crazy. I mean, they gave us tons of coverage.
New techniques like social media played a big role in the marketing as well.
One thing that we did differently this year is we really doubled down on some of our social media outreach in the way we did it because we have someone on board now who's really good at that. And so we were excited because Facebook ads and the way they were addressed got us a lot of registrants. So that was wonderful. That was a neat element that in the communications area we were proud of.
Even some big-time media came to the symposium.
The weirdest thing was we had a television crew from Fuji TV, which is the Japanese television broadcasting system, fly in from New York without telling us they were coming, just in hoping to get an interview with Clint Hill, even though that wasn't guaranteed. So that was interesting because I really wanted to facilitate that for them, just because that's great for BSC. And so trying to make that happen, they ended up getting 5 minutes, and they were thrilled. They flew all the way here, they got 5 minutes with them, and they were just grateful, as if I'd provided them a day-long sit-down. So it was fantastic. I felt good about that.
The symposium had a unique look and feel. A lot of hard work and hours was put into the design.
Well, I spent quite a bit of time researching Kennedy's stuff from back at the time, and Dusty and I both agreed that that was a look we really wanted to go with. And we thought, how interesting would it be to maybe make it feel like if he was campaigning again, at this time. It came together rather quickly, but what took me the longest was actually doing the vector image of Kennedy's portrait. And I know there's those filters out there that'll make you do it in a snap, but that just doesn't, it's not as polished. And so I had to go back in and actually retrace everything and make sure, you know, his eyes weren't staring off in a couple different directions, because that's never attractive, really. So that actually took me, I would have to say, around 8 or 10 hours, which is kind of wild. But then once I got that put together and I, you know, found that texture for the background, it was just a matter of playing around with laying out the text, and then you know, I kind of had that, but I wasn't completely sure how I wanted it. And then Dusty came by and he sat down and he's like, well, remember the campaign, we want it to look like that. So that's where, like, you know, the red stripe and then the blue stripe came in, and it went together really easily after that.
With the event reaching capacity crowds consistently throughout and getting great media coverage, Marty Peel described the symposium as a
raging success. I was so happy. So that's a nice way to get through a thing like that, is that at the end you say, that was a raging success.
Jared Schumacher, Mystic Media.
Wow, that was a lot of work.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time and effort to put something like this together. Here's speaker Lori Fenner talking about the importance of the symposium and the impact it has on the people.
Personally, the symposium caused me to get out my warm clothes. Coming to North Dakota in November was a stretch for me. No, the symposium personally meant that I took time out of my busy schedule to kind of sit and be with the material and get to study something that I was interested in but had not gotten to spend much time on before. It also forces one to remember what our students go through if we have forgotten when they have a deadline and have to get a paper done. The importance, though, so all of these seem trite, but I think that they're important because at the end of the day, symposiums are educational tools for not just students and faculty, but for the public. And what I am always impressed with, and I did the 9/11 Commission Symposium here too, is that this symposium isn't just for Bismarck State College or the students here, but are broadcast pretty widely, and I just saw there was some newspaper coverage and so on. So this is a public service. So one, I feel honored and privileged to get to contribute, but the importance of the symposium, especially on this particular topic, is to bring us back to a historical time period that should still have resonance today, that still does have lessons for us today, and that we should continue to kind of keep in mind and think about how the dynamics happen. In Washington, politically, with international politics, in terms of the Cold War and so on. Your speakers yesterday who spoke on the Cold War and who spoke on racial dynamics in our country, it's not so very long ago. Speaker Kennedy, Dr. Kennedy, who spoke yesterday, talking about how the football teams in the South get integrated, you know, and then on the current news we can read about professional football players bullying each other. And still have these racial overtones. So, you know, on the one hand, historically, it seems like it never ends, but that means that there's a prime opportunity for us to learn from the past here as well. The symposium is very important, and I think that you all use it to great effect.
So much went into the making of the JFK Symposium, including providing food services for the crew, staff, and attendees. Breakfast and lunch were served to hundreds of people on this 3-day event. There was soup, sandwiches, and side dishes provided by the kitchen staff, as well as coffee, water, and pop to stay fueled up for the long lineup of speakers. People came from all over to hear of JFK's legacy, career, and accomplishments. So we just want to give credit to the kitchen staff for their hard work on these memorable days. This was all made possible by the 4th floor addition of the NECE building last November. The kitchen has been a wonderful feature for conferences, speakers, and the JFK Symposium.
As a member of Mystic Media, I would personally like to say that being a part of this symposium was an absolute honor. The symposium was streamed live on The Mix and on Mystic Media's website.
So Mercer, have you ever met someone who's walked on the moon?
I can't say that I have. What about you?
No, but I did get the opportunity to see Harrison Schmitt speak last week.
Wow, let's take a look.
Oh, I think launch has to be the most exciting part. It's hard to separate any one. I mean, you launch, getting out of Earth orbit on the way to the moon, landing on the moon, going into lunar orbit before that. You know, there's every day has some highlight. But I tell you, when you're actually on a Saturn V with 7.5 million pounds of thrust coming out of those 5 engines, that gets your attention. A very heavy vibration, gradual acceleration. You don't immediately feel heavier, but in 2 minutes and 45 seconds, you're 4 times your weight. You're 4 Gs. So that was an exciting part of it. And then when that first stage set of engines turn off, you immediately become weightless and actually decelerate a little bit. So you go to minus 1.5 Gs from 4. And then when the second stage engines ignite, you go to a plus 1.5 Gs. And all that happens in just slightly more than a second. So you know why you're strapped in.
Clint Hill drew big crowds. Over 600 people viewed his November 6th presentation, in which he recounted the events of the assassination.
When I did that, my eyes went right across the back of the presidential car. And I saw what happened. I saw the president grab at his throat like this, and he violently moved to his left toward Mrs. Kennedy. Now, the president, as you know, wore a back brace. So he couldn't go forward. He couldn't duck. Only way he could go was either left or right, and the right-hand side of the car prevented him going right, so he went to his left toward Mrs. Kennedy. I immediately recognized there was a problem, something was wrong. So I jumped off the follow-up car running board, and I started to run toward the presidential vehicle. My objective was to get on top of the rear of the car to form a barrier, or a shield behind both President and Mrs. Kennedy to prevent anything further from happening. When I jumped off the car, the motorcycle was immediately to my left. This is myself here. There's the motorcycle officer. Now the president has been hit by the third shot.
That does it for this episode of MystiCast. I'm Nikki Johnson.
And I'm Mercer Sage. Check us out online at bscmysticmedia.com.
And also, check out BSC's radio station, The Mix, at bscmix.com. Thanks for watching.